Lauren, Culp, publisher and CEO at CUInsight.com, and I am bringing you a 3 questions of video interview today with a very special guest. I'm excited to have joining me the Chief Compliance Officer at Nymbus, Michelle Prohaska. Michelle, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we have a lot of exciting things to talk about today, all compliance themed,
Yes.
which
Yes.
is going to be a really interesting conversation. And I know, compliance not always, it doesn't always sound like the most interesting, but there actually are a lot of trends going on in the compliance world. So what are maybe the top 3 compliance trends or topics that you're thinking about as we approach the end of 2022 and into 2023?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of things I think happening in the world of compliance. I think the few that are really specific to compliance that we're seeing, just in terms of where the industry is going, is I would say on the first one where we've really kind of been in this phase of regulation by enforcement.
Hmm.
And so where traditionally there was kind of this sense that, new regulation came by through proposed rulemaking and those making their way to final rules. Compliance officers are kind of finding themselves learning from the lessons or the mistakes of others that they've made and using that guidance to help think about things that maybe they want to change proactively to address what's kind of happening in the regulatory environment as things are shaking out amongst the agencies. And I think the second thing that we're seeing is this very heavy emphasis on the UDAP and fair lending regulations, which traditionally have been probably a little bit gray in terms of applicability. And we're seeing that evolution happening where that's becoming bigger and broader. And again, tying into those enforcement actions where it's kind of learned by example. So see what others have done or maybe what they haven't done quite so great, and where you can modify that to set yourself and your financial institution up for success. And then I think the third thing that there's a ton of talk going on about is the potential for how fraud is changing over time. You look at things like PPP and unemployment insurance programs that we had through COVID, and then payment fraud and in those areas with things like Zelle have been really top of mind. And so I think we're anticipating that heading into 2023, there will be some more regulation associated with that of where really does that liability live when it comes to either the consumer or the FI when fraud happens and occurs for them. So those are 3 definitely top of mind for me right now.
That makes a lot of sense. I was just trying to sell something on Facebook Marketplace and somebody sent me a Zelle email that was not from Zelle. So it's reached me already.
Absolutely. And they're sophisticated. They're getting better and better by time, and it's harder to pick that stuff out. So
It is. And I even remember thinking, if it was someone in an older generation who was less, tech savvy, maybe wouldn't have noticed. But
absolutely.
what are you
Absolutely.
seeing then in the digital space when it really comes to risk and compliance? How's that
Yeah.
changing?
I think, the first thing is that we're seeing this big focus on experience. And so what we're seeing from kind of the difference in generations, but also the difference in how banking works is that banking has become less about the product and more about what the product and the experience looks like for consumers. And so I think particularly with some of the younger generations, we see this message of authenticity and wanting to bank in ways that align with their values and with what they like. So for instance, I have 2 dogs at home and I love my dogs, and the concept of like a debit card with my dog on the front of it or donations, pet rescues or things like that, like those seem like the kind of place that I want to bank that is so much tied to the experience beyond just being able to say, hey, I really want a debit card that I can use with cash back or something to that effect. So I think we're seeing that change. And I think alongside that, we're seeing this change from really what was, and again, those traditional models and how things work to a bigger focus on the connection between consumers and their bank and how they bank, as well as kind of, in some cases, discarding what was to think about how can we do things different. So really looking at that brand expertise, the mindset that you have, and trying to put it together in new ways, new combinations to meet customers a little bit closer to where they are.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And I think what we're seeing from consumers is evolving really rapidly is like what they can experience with Amazon and
Yeah.
Facebook and Google is changing. And so I can see how much importance there would be in being able to offer all of those and still be really compliant and really.
Absolutely. Yeah. Bank director I attended a conference over the fall, and they had talked about that the average consumer had something like 42 different financial products or apps that they worked with. And when you think about it, it is all of the Amazon and the Zelle and Venmo and all of those things where, you go buy concert tickets and you do it straight through your app, like
Yeah.
all of those add up. And I think it's crazy when you think about how many there are.
It really is. Well, and as you think about compliance, then with all of these different products in different places, and then with credit unions trying to keep up and compete, and maybe not even just keep up, but be on the leading edge, how is the compliance role then really evolving for financial institutions and for fintech alike?
Yeah. It's definitely changing. I think, compliance has always kind of traditionally been that it's a business function, kind of a necessary evil or a cost that you had to have, but it was kind of always traditionally thought of as a cost center. And I think what we're seeing that evolution in is that compliance really can be a source of strategic advantage. And where this was probably best said is Jeffrey Kindle, our CEO, had commented on a speaking engagement that one of our client banks, Connect One, their Sia Vanzia, she had posted and made a comment about innovation was code for compliance. And when you think about it, it really is, as you look to adapt, you look to change what you do. Compliance is such a huge part of that. They're a huge collaborator to that, and really a part of where you can make change and do things a little differently. And it comes back to both understanding your business's strategic goals for the credit union, for your members, and what you're looking to get to, as well as where compliance can help you meet that. So kind of swapping from maybe that traditional, hey, this is the party of no, to how do we get to yes? And I think that's where you're seeing compliance professionals really start to lean in.
I think that's so important, seeing compliance as maybe a collaborator in the process of innovation and not someone who, to your point, is going to be like, no, we can't do that. No, we can't do that.
Yeah, they don't. I mean, there's, the rules and the regulations really do play an important part in the industry, and protecting our consumers and our members is such a big thing. But I think finding those ways where we can do that while also offering them the services and the benefits and the products that they're really looking to get out of it. There are new ways that we can do that and still be safe and sound and offer compliance services too.
Well, that is a perfect way to wrap up our conversation. It's been so interesting chatting about compliance, where you see it going. But before we do go, do you have any final thoughts for our audience or final asks of our listeners today?
The biggest thing that I would say is if you're in a compliance role, if you're not in a compliance role, anyone who's really listening to this podcast, look at how you can work with those teams. A ton of what we do with our clients and with our customers is, again, look at how we can rethink the way that we bank today, the way that we approach risk, and reconsider how your compliance team can be a partner to you in that strategy and help the success of both your customers and your members and the credit union overall.
Well, amazing message. If anyone has more questions, we will link to contact information for Nymbus, for Michelle and her team there as well. So if you did want to get in touch, we'll definitely have that in the post here. So definitely check that out. But in the meantime, Michelle, thank you so much for joining. I know I learned a thing or two too. It's really great to see the ways that the compliance world is evolving, and to your point, beyond the traditional, maybe stereotype of what a compliance role looks like.
Absolutely.
I hope maybe we get a chance to meet in person at some point soon. But until then, I hope you stay well. And thank you to all of our audience today for tuning in, and we'll be back again next time.